Let's talk SEC. Let's go to Georgia, Bama. I mean, once again, college football playoff implications for an SEC championship game against Georgia and Alabama. Bama catching 5.5.
which
They're
has moved
catching.
up. Last week I got it at 3.5. Yeah.
You took
I
Georgia
had
three and a
to.
half.
I did, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna take Bama 5.5.
Ooh. I
Yeah.
explain why. I want to hear this here because I want to hear this. I want to hear this.
All right. Here it is. Uh, Carson Beck has been very good this year. I, if anyone has been following the show, you have to know that I am the conductor on the Carson Beck fan train. All right. He has been
Since
phenomenal
August.
since August. He's been phenomenal. How many really good defenses has Carson Beck really picked apart? Like how many has he had to play one like this all year? No.
Can I rebuttal here real quick? Like at the same time, how many teams have played a defense of this caliber? Okay, you just don't like Alabama might have the best defense in the country. I don't think that's crazy at all. I think with the edge rushers, their corner, their secondary, linebackers are getting better. Kevin Steele has them humming. I think this defense is probably one top three in the country. To continue.
Yeah, I mean we've seen Alabama play top 10, top 15 defenses this year. They've done it. They played two of them, right?
Okay.
And in one of those games, they lost, right, against Texas. It's a tough game. It's Jalen Milroe early. But then we saw
Ooh.
Jalen Milroe turn the corner in a game against Texas A&M on the road against an elite defensive line, arguably the best pass rush in the country. If you're just looking at numbers, if you're
Mm-hmm.
just looking
And
at
talent.
numbers, yeah, I don't think we're the best pass rush in the entire country. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But if you're just looking at sack numbers and tackles for loss, you could say that Texas A&M is elite up front. I mean, is Tennessee elite up front? Is Kentucky elite up front? Is Auburn's good up front? Are they elite up front? I think this number should be at 3.5. What you got it at 3.5 is the correct number. This is a reaction to the Iron Bowl game last week, which you have to throw out the door.
And which should have been like we took. Okay, I guess we took Bama and the points. We put our own money on Bama to cover, and we are not surprised one bit that that game came down to the wire.
Yeah. So look, I'm gonna do something weird here, especially because it's only 5.5 points. I'm taking Bama to cover the 5.5, but I'll take Georgia to win. Georgia by a field goal. So
I will say, I will say here, I think that's an interesting play here because Bama has played in close games before, and they have won them. To be honest, in the one score games, they have won, and Georgia has not really played in any one score games.
the
Right?
Auburn
I mean,
game.
Auburn, but it was like once they got humming, it was all like Auburn did not have the juice to hang with them for 4 quarters. Bama does, without a doubt. I do think now you saw Missouri, Georgia made plays when they had to, but in a one score game, anything can happen. And I think that's interesting that you take, Bama plus 5.5. I do think if this game's a close game, give me the edge to Bama, but I don't think it will be. And that's why I'm going to take Georgia minus 5.5.
Here's a counter, though, to my argument. Sure, Georgia hasn't played a defense like Alabama's defense, but Jalen Milroe, I don't know that he's played a secondary like this all year. That's the other argument, too. Like this secondary for Georgia is really, really good. They're
When
effective. And
we
Bama,
saw him run it up against secondaries that are pretty poor, Texas A&M, right?
mm-hmm,
Tennessee,
yep,
LSU, Kentucky.
exactly. So are they going to get the big play this game? I don't know that they are. I don't know that they are. Now, if Georgia dedicates a guy to stopping Jalen Milroe on the ground, right? Get maybe a heavier box, then maybe we could see something over the top potentially. But I think Georgia's athletes at corner are better than the athletes that Bama has at receiver.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Except
not to say
Bond.
Bama doesn't have great receivers. I mean, Isaiah Bond is awesome. We know Isaiah 431. When Law, I happen to think Law is really special. I think he'll be really
They
good
need
for
him
Alabama.
more involved. You saw in this game, was it 2 years ago? You saw it was really the breakout of Jamison Williams. And it wasn't like everyone knew about him, but on a national level, it was like, okay, this guy needs to be a first round pick. Like he can tear his ACL and still be a top 11 pick in the draft. Like that's how like special he was. We saw in this game. I think Kendrick Law, I don't think he's him, right? But you mentioned it. Kendrick Law needs to be more involved and has to have touches because you need players run after the catch. You saw Jalen Waddle, a couple years ago in this game, just turn the corner against Georgia, which they they have not seen. That just doesn't happen against Georgia, right? Kendrick Law and Bond are two of those players that can actually do that.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think also, I mean, Georgia, what's at stake for them right now is, you know, there's a lot at stake. There's a win streak. There's an expectation, right? People have already chalked them up, to be in. So it's like,
Which we'll talk about this at the end of the video because we'll get into like what happens if Bama wins. Is Georgia still in? We'll talk about that when we get there. Once we're done breaking down the game itself. You're right. You're right though. Like, and you got Kirby versus Saban, and like everyone feels like Saban or Kirby is taking a step up as of right now. Like Kirby is at the top of the game. Georgia's the top of college football, but Bama was that for 10 years. And if this changes, if this game flips here, like there will be real talk again. Like, hey, like Nick Saban's not dead. Bama's not dead. Like the dynasty's not over, and whatnot.
I think this is an absolute close game. I think it's gonna be a great one.
Okay, in Bama's games where they've struggled, what happened? Was it explosive? To me, I see explosive plays and penalties.
Like they gave up explosive plays and they had penalties.
And key penalties. And I think that this Georgia offense is different than in years prior. I do think Carson Beck throws a beautiful deep ball. I think Lad McConkey, Rara Thomas are great deep threats. Brock Bowers, I haven't even gotten to him. He's a monster. You obviously got Marcus Roseman, St. Jack Saint or whatever. I like him over the middle of the field as well as Dominique Lovett. And they're actually going to run the ball. Like we saw Auburn have success when Bama knew they could not pass the ball. Auburn still found explosive runs with the quarterback and with the running games. I don't think Beck is quite the running threat that Peyton Thorne is, even though that is what it is. I do think he's got good pocket mobility. He can extend plays for sure. But if you want to talk about like designing runs for Carson Beck, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's your best chance to win because you need him healthy and I like him throwing from the pocket. I like those running backs being able to get what they do. This O-line is physical, really, really physical. And Bama right now is a little banged up in the middle of the interior of their defense on a D-line, which definitely a little bit cause for concern. Yeah, and like in Milroe, I do think two things can be true here with him. I do think he has gotten better. You can see it substantially better. The team believes him. He believes himself. Tommy Reese has done an excellent job of scheming up plays for him, finding out what's comfortable with him, using him as a runner, as a deep thrower, letting him extend plays. The O-line has gotten better for sure, but I also think like it might be a little overinflated, right? I do think people, and I talked about it back when they lost to Texas and South Florida. They struggled with them. I think people jump ship too early and they just brought them on. Oh, the dynasty's over. Milroe's terrible. Whatever. They have no chance to compete in the SEC. And then you saw them get better and better. And I think people, immediately put them way back up high, even more than they were at the beginning of the year. It's like, oh, look at them. They're scoring 42 points against LSU, 49 against Kentucky, 34 against Tennessee. I do think it's a little bit overinflated as to where it actually is. I think it's a little bit lower than they are. And that's going to be the difference on a couple third downs. And actually, that's going to be the difference in, 10 to 14 points, which I do see this game kind of being around. The backdoor cover is not out of consideration. I'm absolutely worried about that. But I do think Georgia in the second half, they can lean on you, right? They can control this football game. And if on third down, they are excellent. They are excellent on third down. And Bama is good, but not great on third down. And I think Georgia, that's going to be their margin of victory. Getting off the field and then being able to extend drives, putting this defense. We've seen it like against these Bama and Georgia has been vulnerable through the air, through the explosive passing play. And obviously Bama's been known for that this year with Milroe's arm and the deep threats they do have. But I think Georgia has it in this game. I think Georgia will do that and expose that part of Kevin Steele's defense there. Wait, real quick, can we go back to is there a coaching edge here for either team? And is there a talent
Nope.
edge? We'll get into coaching first. Is there a talent and coaching edge?
Uh, there's not a talent or coaching edge, I think.
Is it quarterback? Why is this line 5.5 then?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think it should be within a field goal, but that's just me.
To me, I do think the line was inflated. I do
It's
think
it's
that's why I took it at 3.5.
outcomes. It's the outcomes of the game. There's not a coaching difference. There's not a talent difference, right? It's outcomes. This line is outcome oriented.
You're saying like if Georgia wins, they can pull away from Bama, but Bama can't really pull away from Georgia. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I'll say, yeah. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, because their edges, there is a quarterback edge here, right? Beck.
I with Beck's arm is better than Milrose, I think, just with what he's been able to do with it. No, Milrose has a better arm, quote unquote, where he can get the ball down the field, but so can Carson Beck. Carson Beck just does everything right at the quarterback spot. And Jalen Monroe,
Yeah,
if things go wrong, he can make them right with his legs.
I think
So
Milroe gives you more of a headache, like you said. I think Beck is a better quarterback, though. I don't want to confuse those two things, but if that makes sense to our viewers,
I agree with that. I think Carson Beck is playing himself into potential top 15 draft pick.
for sure. Everyone's already assuming like what's Georgia going to do next year in the quarterback position.
Yep.
Which is crazy. At the beginning of the year, everyone's like, "Oh, Beck, is he the guy?" Whatever, yada yada. Real quick here, in terms of scenarios, right? Does Bama, do they get if they win, are they in? Is that as simple as that?
Nope.
I think that's the right answer. I think that's the right answer. And I think that Bama fans and people on Twitter, like in SEC people, especially, like you have to come to the realization that you might get left out this year. You might get left
I
out this
think
year.
it's more than likely you get left out this year if you're a Bama fan, even if you win.
And you know what I
Not
point
not
back
because
to?
they shouldn't, not because they shouldn't be in. I'm just saying we see where this committee values this Bama team. We see where this committee values that Oregon team. They're both going to have top 3 wins, and Oregon's only loss is redeemed, essentially.
Yeah, which is crazy. I just think the argument here is like this Georgia win is weighted a lot more than any other win, right? It has to be. It has to be, right? Now, even though the line's only 5.5, it started at 3.5. This Georgia win is the best, and it's pretty not even close. Texas beating Bama would probably be another very good win, but it's also early in the season. The thing here is I point back to is the SEC struggled not a conference schedule. They struggled. Is Ole Miss over Tulane was probably their best win
Uh,
over a backup quarterback. Kentucky over
Ole Miss
Louisville,
is no
fine. Kentucky over
Ole Miss
Louisville.
is
No, I'm saying like, I'm sorry. Did I say Ole Miss? I'm at the SEC in general. They're out of conference schedule.
their best
They're
win was probably Kentucky's win against Louisville.
Yeah, and that just happened and probably saved Bama. Oh my god, which could point to them. The thing is, the rest of the top 25 is you have quality wins. Like, is Tennessee still rated? And like,
Which is
Ole
wild,
Miss,
but we don't have to
and
talk about it.
like all these other LSU's up there. All these other SEC teams are like Missouri. There's six teams in the SEC up there, and they're pretty high up there, and they're giving Georgia and Bama quality wins. Except in the Pac-12 is just, and you look at Oregon's wins, it's just, I don't know, is it Oregon State is the only ranked win they have? So
Yeah,
like
because
that's what's
Utah,
weird is like
UCLA have both fallen off the board.
that's why I go back to the
Didn't
fact of like
play Oregon. Didn't play Arizona.
why can you keep Oregon where they are but drop everybody else in the Pac-12 and move everyone else in the SEC and not move Bama's wins up. So like that's why like the whole committee this year has been very confusing. And I
Yeah,
think they've set themselves up. And I know that probably doesn't work like this, but if they were smart and if they just realized, no one really cares about the rankings throughout the year, everyone cares about the last Final Four. Like if they set themselves and they want to set themselves up for the least amount of headache, they could have done it a little bit differently, But I do think you're right though. I think Bama, it's not as easy as that. I think both these teams can make it. If Bama wins and Georgia loses closely, I think they can still make it. There's still a case for them. I do think there's a scenario here where both teams do get left out, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. How and these might be the two best teams in the country. talent wise, coaching wise, eye test. Like these might be the two best teams in the country, and yet they're both be left out, which is crazy. I don't know how else to put it.